Hey, what's new and exciting? It's Kevin O'Shaughnessy here. I got a few minutes before my next lesson shows up, so I wanted to talk to you guys about the concept of the musician's musician. If you're not familiar with this term, I hear it usually only from other rock musicians, and they use it in the context of virtuosic players, referring to them as musicians. And on the surface, it sounds kind of like a term of respect, but most of the time, it's kind of meant to bring that virtuoso down a peg by suggesting that the only people that they're trying to impress are other musicians, which, as I've stated in another video, the only time a musician is trying to impress other musicians is when they are auditioning for a gig. Then at that point, yes, if I'm auditioning for a gig, yes, I am trying to impress those players. But other than that, I'm trying to connect with an audience, and I'm using a vocabulary that inspires me and that I'm hoping reaches an audience emotionally. And that's what any great player is trying to do, So what I decided to do, though, is start thinking about the term musician's musician and how can we use this in a more productive way that can actually be more beneficial to everybody. And I thought, well, a true musician's musician would be the kind of musician that other musicians want to work with. So how can you be a musician's musician? Well, here's a handful of things in no particular order that you can do to become a true musician's musician and be a better bandmate. So, number one, you can cultivate a positive attitude no matter what the circumstances are. Sometimes that's hard, shit goes sideways, but if you can maintain a positive attitude and a positive energy, then you can be a musician's musician. Number two, if you can continuously show respect for your fellow musicians and the production that you are in, you can be a musician's musician. Sometimes your bandmates are having a bad night. It's easy to want to rag on them, but if you can keep showing them respect, help them up when they've fallen down, so to speak, you can be a musician's musician. And that's the same thing for the production. If you're doing a gig, it's a hard gig, it's a bad session, it's just a shit show of a concert. If you're going to sit there and start ragging on it, the only person who really looks bad is you. But if you can, kind of going back to number one, keep that positive attitude and show respect for what the production is attempting to do, you can be a musician's musician. Number three, be open to learning. Learn from your bandmates, learn from all of the situations that you're in. If you can do that, you can be a musician's musician. And this includes taking critique. Sometimes I personally am not very good at that, especially if I've been working on something really hard for a while and somebody says, hey man, that's not quite working. I'm like, but come on, man. It's hard to keep that in check sometimes, but if you can, then you definitely can become the kind of musician that people want to work with. You can take direction, you can take criticism and turn it around and very positively and productively make better music out of it. That's what people are looking to do. Some other things, some slightly more practical things that you could do. If you are early to rehearsals and gigs, you can be a musician's musician. Nobody likes getting that text 5 minutes after you're supposed to hit the stage. Oh man, I'm going to be 15 minutes late, which is a text that I've gotten. And that sucks. You're on the stage, you're fuming. So if you can be on time, that's good. If you can be early, that's better. Next one, what are we on now? Number 5, I think, total, is know your material. If you can know your material, if you can practice between rehearsals and between gigs, then you can be a musician's musician. Nothing drags down a rehearsal process faster than somebody in the band or a couple of somebodies in the band going, wait a minute, how does that part go again? Especially with the way we can record rehearsals. I've always been a big fan of pencil and paper. Just jot down notes on a lyric sheet if you need to about how a part's supposed to go or how something's supposed to happen. But, get it down and then listen to it or review it and practice it from one rehearsal to the next so that you can keep the creativity flowing. You can't do anything creative if you're constantly relearning the song. So know your material before you hit the rehearsal, and you too can be a musician's musician. I think one other practical thing is always make sure that your gear is in good shape. And that could be anything. That could be your voice too. I mean, your voice is your instrument, right? So make sure it's in good shape. Make sure that you're not trashing it out at every opportunity, you know. If you're a guitar player or bass player, make sure your cables are in good shape, your amp is in good shape, you know, your instrument is all in good shape. Make sure everything's well intonated and stuff. You know, nothing, it's kind of a pain, you know, when, you know, you're hearing somebody play a part that could be so much better, except for the fact that the guitar won't stay in tune, you know, or whatever. Or the drum heads aren't tuned, so it sounds like you're playing on cardboard boxes, you know. Take some time to take care of your gear, and you too can be a musician's musician. And the last one, I guess sort of a bonus one, is that if you can constantly develop all of these qualities, and of course this is not an exhaustive list, this is just the first handful of things that I could think of. If you can constantly develop, work on improving those qualities, then you can be a musician's musician. You're going to be the kind of person that everybody wants to work with. And I guess of all of these things that I've pointed out right now, it basically comes down to two things: be nice and be prepared. And if you can do those two things, and here's a few different ways to do it, then you can be a musician's musician. And that, to me, is what a real musician's musician is. It's somebody that other musicians want to work with. It has nothing to do with how many scales they know and how fast they can play. It's how well they can do these personal things and these practical things. This be nice, be prepared. And that's really what it comes down to. So, I hope you found that useful. If you did, please subscribe and share it with your friends. In the meantime, I am Kevin O'Shaughnessy, and I will see you in the next video.